Hello everyone and welcome. So today we'll be talking about file I/O. So let's get started. So file I/O refers to reading data from a file or writing data to a file. Really, if your program interacts with files, then that is referred to as file I/O. And file I/O is sometimes called file handling. So those two terms can be used interchangeably. So Python has a built-in function for working with files, and it's the open function. And the open function has two parameters, a file name and a mode. And the mode refers to what you're going to be doing with the file. So there are 4 different modes that you can use when opening a file. The first one is read, and that's denoted with a lowercase r. There's write, there's append, and create. So when reading data from a file, you first need an actual file. So I've gone ahead and created this input file, and it just has some text on it, and it's called input-data.txt. And our goal is to read this data into our program. So to do this, we first set a variable, in our case it's f, and we're setting that equal to the open input-data.txt, and we're specifying r as the mode. So remember the open function, I said it takes in a file name and a mode. So our file name is input-data.txt, and the mode is r, which specifies that we're going to be reading from this file. Then the next thing I'm going to do is create another variable and set it equal to f.read. So the read method will return the entire text. So just to show you all, if we print the data, oh yeah, and one last thing to note is that when working with files, you always want to make sure to close them after you're done. So we can do this by saying f.close, and you want to close the file after you're done working with it. So be sure to close your file after you're done using it. Okay, so if we print the data, then this is what we get. You see we get the entire text. So with the read method, you can also specify how many characters you want it to read. So for example, if I just said read, say 5, and then I rerun my code, you see we only get the first 5 characters. We get THIS and then the space, because remember there's a space after the S. So we can specify a number in here, and this will basically say, okay, read this many characters. But if we leave it blank, then it'll read the entire text, just like we did up here. So sometimes we don't want to read the entire text all at once, and instead we want to read the file line by line. So to do that, we can use the read line function instead of the read function. So that would look something like this. We could say like line 1 is equal to f.read line. Then if we print line 1, then we should just get the first line of the file. Yeah, you see we get, this is the first line, which is the first line of the file. And if we were to call read line again, then this would give us the second line. So for example, like we could say line 2 is equal to f.readline. So now this will give us the second line, and it'll store it in the variable line 2. Just to show you all, if we print line 2, you see we get, here's the second line. Okay, so instead of reading data from a file, sometimes we want to write data to a file. So we can do this with the open function, but the mode is going to be different this time. So we're going to be using the W as our mode because we're going to be writing. So that would look something like this. We could say f is equal to open, and then the name of our file. So this will be the name of the output file. So output file.txt, and we're specifying that the mode is W for write. So then we can use the write method to write whatever data we want to the file. So in this case, that would look something like this. We could say f.write, and then in parentheses, we just pass in whatever we want it to write to the file. So in this case, we're just going to be adding some text to the file. And as always, once we're done using the file, we want to make sure to close it. And before we run this, I want to show you all that this file, this output file.txt, it does not exist yet. So right now, we're writing this code in tutorial12.py, and tutorial12.py is right here. And you can see in this folder, all that we have is the input data and the Python file. So the this output data file doesn't even exist yet. See, it's non-existent. But once we run our code, then you see nothing happened in the console. But if we look back in our project directory, then you can see we have that output file. And if we open up the output file, you see we got the text that we were trying to write to it. Here, let me open it up in here. You see we get the output file. So you can use the write function to write data to a file. And this is super helpful because let's just imagine that you had like a list of names. Then you could use a for loop to iterate over that list of names and write each name to the file. That's just a pretty basic example of like when you might want to write something to a file. So file IO is essentially used if you want to read data from a file or write data to a file. And this is a super useful thing to know about. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.